up, everybody? So I've been in this deep contemplative area in regards to this whole chicken and egg dilemma. And if anything, these entries serve as kind of like my own version of the ever so common scene within a scientific flick, right? Where you have somebody who's kind of off in isolation that is recording their day-to-days. So here's my day-to-day. Now, furthermore on fear, if nothing is nothing, then something is always something. Which means what keeps something from becoming nothing or something else always was, as something always is. What is this what keeps something from nothing? Is this something what keeps something as something fear? I tried before to say that the egg came first before the chicken. For the egg is as the ego, the identity of a thing. And the thing itself could know no fear with no identity. The ego, the eggshell. So the egg came first before a thing could be called a chicken. Now, I rest on the notion that since nothing is nothing, that means a thing always has ego and never doesn't, since nothing is nothing. Something is always and has always been something. Remarking my comment to me before about how the chicken is within the egg, the chicken being represented by fear and the egg by ego, to come to a conclusion. Now certainly if the chicken is represented by fear, then many things move like a chicken, more than a chicken. There are many things that are chicken beyond just what we call a chicken. There are lots of chickens that aren't chickens. As much as the saying fight or flight has been represented as an intrinsic characteristic to all things classified as living, so the chicken has been for quite some time then under this newfound designation. That then being, if fear is an integral part of identity, then like before, the egg laid by the rooster falls neither to either. Fear, in the most base case, recognized as change. The more drastic the change, the greater the level of fear associated with it. In this, identity is also integral, as the ego will shatter like an egg if what something goes through, it cannot follow through. Saying that what it is cannot change, even if it doesn't feel fear, what it is within its egg of identity will not allow it in its form to move on. And anything that chooses to go beyond this point and break its shell isn't. And since only nothing is nothing, then this is something that isn't ever. For if it's something, it hasn't done this and is held by fear. Then, as like I squabbled with before, the chicken is in the egg, but the chicken is what houses the egg. Right? Because a chicken sits on an egg to incubate it. So, you know. Better said now, the chicken is in the egg as integral components of yolk and surrounding parts. But the actual eggshell is composed of chicken, which is the barrier of change for the identity of whatever is housed within the egg. Where then, in this case, everything's a little chicken when it comes to anything that is, which is maybe why the saying persists, tastes like chicken. So, what I couldn't help but think about when I talked about this was the concept of fate and free will. Because if everything is in its eggshell and fear is the separating thing behind every identity, then every identity has always been this identity. And so you could actually bring in the whole free will and choice argument within the chicken and the egg argument. Right? And if that was to then be the case, the way in which I actually described the free will argument was with another sort of poetic explanation or workaround, right? In that the energies like played a game, right? Where they chose what they were, but in the end it was what they always chose when it got around to it, you know? It's the same thing here with this chicken and egg whole thing. And before, what I tried to do was say that, like, you know, the egg came before the chicken because the chicken wasn't around until there were many things that were born of the egg. But then in this argument, I'm attacking my previous proposition by saying that chicken itself is like a general term meaning something that is afraid. And in this, fear, the concept of something having fear or being afraid is an integral part of identity. So fear itself is the eggshell. And fear is manifest by change. Now, obviously, if something experiences so much change, this drastic change that I talk about, the eggshell ruptures and breaks. The ego is... now I'm really getting mixed up here. This is scrambled eggs, folks. The egg, the ego is shattered and broken. And what more is death, really, right? And if something goes so far beyond this ego, this identity, this fear, like I said, even if they don't feel fear, then it's shattered and broken and no more. And since only nothing is nothing, it means that whatever has done this isn't. So, what that actually means is that fear is eternally associated with identity, as the egg itself has always been around, right? And that means that there are many things that we could call chicken, which means that there are more things that are chicken than just chickens. And that's where, you know, I touched upon that in there. I loved my saying, the egg laid by the rooster falls neither to either. The egg laid by the rooster, in this case, being which came first, the chicken or the egg. And it falls neither to either, meaning that, you know, the rooster, which is how a chicken sleeps, it roosts. But, you know, the old saying is, if a rooster lays an egg, which side of the roof does it fall, right? I'm thinking in terms of where, oh man, I'm having such a deep thought right now, where it's like the sentence I just said before, where I was saying I was thinking as, is like this egg going down a road where it cracks and shatters and breaks, and it can't be something that continues on or follows through. So I had to restate my literary terms surrounding the whole notion that I was trying to express, because it was going nowhere. But, you know, in my free form that I did before, in my last post about the chicken and the egg, I talked about how for a chicken to actually sleep, it has to be secure and safe so that it can roost, right? And I did the little joke about how many chickens does it take to screw in a light bulb. It's a dozen, which is like dozing off in a meditative state, contemplating over this whole freaking notion of the chicken or the egg, choice and determinism, where you know, roosters don't lay eggs, but for a chicken to lay an egg, it has to be able to roost, which means that it has to have a safe environment. So the rooster is in fact a key integral part of the egg laying process. So a rooster does lay an egg, but the rooster, in this case, the egg literally just piles up beneath the rooster, and it doesn't fall off either side of the roof, you know, because what I'm saying here is that neither of them are first, because like fear is identity, the eggshell is chicken, which is the ego, and the chicken is within the egg, but the chicken sits on the egg, so the egg is within the chicken, type of thing, you know? And it's like what I said before, how, you know, it's like this thing is being like, there's like expanding molecules of this change. It's like the egg is like this grand metaphor for what I've talked about before, about gradual change is actually what creates the essence of life, right? And the egg itself, as it's like dropping through the canals of the chicken before it's actually laid, that's like us growing in life, right? Where it's like we were always going to be this thing, but the only things which actually persist and come into existence are these things which they're like printed and expand on this rate of change, which conforms to like something that actually could eventually exist. Where before I just wanted to come to like some really clear conclusion where it's like nothing could fear until it actually had identity, which is the ego, which is the eggshell, you know. How did I get in this nutshell, right? Type of thing. But then I thought more about that, and I tried to collapse that by saying that nothing is ever nothing. Only nothing is nothing. And so if something is actually something, it means it's always been something, which means that there was no absence of actually being something, which means that fear itself was an integral part of this something in the very beginning of this something, as this something has always been what it is. And then that's why it went into the whole free will type of thing, right? Where I then, you know, explained all of that kind of by saying that it's like the energies themselves are like all expanding from this grand energy, you know, and the grand energy from which all things are has always been the grand energy, but everything that's a part of this grand energy chooses what the grand energy is. But It's always what the grand energy has been. So the chicken is within the egg, right? But the chicken also surrounds the egg. The egg is within the chicken. Oh, yeah, right? Because it's like the egg does come from within the chicken. It's the same fucking thing. Well, anyways, living by polar bears. Something tricky, walking on ice, wherein the movement of a thing on ice demands that ice be made. Who owns the world but the one who maps it? Who seeks to own the world but those who think they are above it? The poles free sing the word by demanding a pole, but how is one supposed to sing the word for free when the poles are bought? Buying ice, which to them is nice, as all is encapsulated in a frozen land, with whitewater rapids that crash down on anyone not willing to sit and twiddle their thumbs so the creeping ice can take its time to do what it tells others not to, move. The change from seasons so fast and dramatic, acting to pop one's ears to emphasize just how cold it was, that the peaks then come crashing down in torrents of whitewater rapids. Like nature's blood is water, accentuating its credit for having done by race to get first place. When does nature's blood demand blood? Through bloodshed, then give blood for others' loss of it, then calling the drinkers of nature's blood unnatural, that nature may take credit. Yep. You know, just doing my part. I'm just doing my part, everybody. Whew. Thinking about the whole interactive experience with camera and person on camera, especially when the direction of the camera is all up to the one on camera, right? I feel it's like this whole egg thing with the fear, right? You know, we're trying to grow and expand and be like the one who walks on ice and frees everyone else, so that we can just travel around and be the ones that move and know where everything is, because everything's frozen by our hand, you know, and so we can have it all on demand, you know. We can conquer the world and know all, and nothing will be up to the unknown to us anymore, you know. And in that is our own death, really, because then where can we go from there, right? I mean, we can revisit continually, possibly become creators ourselves in this playwright, and then enjoy our own creations to a certain extent. It's kind of a little more difficult to enjoy your own creations, just because, you know, there's a little bit more, I feel, magic involved in the unknown of having something being presented to you from another entity, another thing coming at you from another direction. Like, that's why sex is so pleasurable, because it's this, you know, intercourse, right? We ourselves are on a course, and we gain a sense of life by crashing into something from our course that we're headed in. If there was nothing that we came across that was moving in another direction, another course, we could not have intercourse. And could we actually have life if we were never to come across something coming from this other direction, right? Which is sex. You know, identity, right? And so going back to what I was talking about before, this camera and, you know, it being directed by the one on camera, what are my motives for what it is that I'm doing here? And, you know, why do these motives kind of edge me a little bit towards the behavior that has been showcased on my channel? You know, well, talking about some of the pieces that I just wrote and about what I'm talking about right now, it's all about that movement, that flow, that direction, you know. I don't want to say it's just having sex, but if I just draw it in terms of like I do with most of my other stuff, then yeah, it is just like having sex. That is life in general. That resistance, you know, to move, right? That like the act of experiencing the world is in the act of having that eggshell kind of thing, right? And if we crack that eggshell and become all, then we're kind of nothing and we can't experience anything, right? And so working within that framework and with this platform, you know, it's kind of like, how can I actually tease the system a little bit? How can I create a new experience? How can I understand something in another way which allows me to give it some more depth? I don't care too much about, you know, whether or not people want to put ones or zeros surrounding the things that I said. That's, to me, it's more about like, what do all those ones and zeros say, and is this something that you know, has given you that experience that I talk about, that experience of traveling, that sexual interaction, and totally destroying the act of sex right here. The act is just merely one of, you know, going to a place that's bewildering, that gives you this resistance, and from that resistance, a sense of pleasure and overcoming when it becomes clear. And then in that, right, you know, you've kind of conquered this place, and it's like you've grown a little bit, and this place has become a part of your identity, right? But then there is no longer that resistance, and so, you know, that's the trouble with these platforms, is because then you're kind of like blazing a trail through what you're posting online, and with you being the director behind it all, then you're trying to continually tease that sensation that I'm talking about, right? And the thing is that it's very, very judgmental. It's very critical, because it's out for everybody to see. And the thing is, it's just like, you know, that time in public school where I'm just speaking thoughts, I'm writing creatively, you know, but it's like if you were to take my works and envision them as a person within the public educational system, then it's like this person is very criticized, they are an outcast, right? But I'm just trying to give people this place that they want to travel to because it's so unknown, it's so foreign, right? But what does that drive me to do? You know, and at what point in time do I crack my eggshell in attempting to actually tease the system a little bit, and attempting to create some pleasure by giving resistance, by giving a state of bewilderment, by totally abstracting something that people have known to be the foundations of the fundamentals of life and of reasoning and of how they've seen things, you know, totally distorting that image while still actually being able to express myself in a way which allows people to see something out of it. And this something is something that they can eventually navigate, and maybe this thing itself then becomes an integral part of the fundamentals, right? You know, and it gets pretty dicey on here, just like, you know, safe sex or whatever, right? Because, you know, you can push it too far, trying to demand that attention, because I want to be able to travel and go to these other places and experience the things that are presented and created by other individuals, so I can have that interaction and that play, that you know, that counterpart, right? And if this platform is something which says, hey, you know, you can gain that by being, you know, a part within this play here by uploading this stuff, and you know, you get likes, you get attention, you get all this other stuff, and then you can go and do those things because you earn something. You earn the right to go and do and find yourself somewhere else. You know, the egg can roll, your egg can go and roll down some road you've never been because you've given people that, you know, and then it's about kind of like collecting on that, and finding that reward. But then also, you know, it's kind of a dangerous game, just because really, more than anything, you just have to be comfortable with yourself. And it's like people may associate you with something when they've seen certain things that have been presented in a way over a certain platform, when it's like they don't realize that, you know, that's what this platform is for. This is a place of expression beyond where I've been. I'm trying to take things to where I haven't been, you know, and then they think that that's where I continually reside, when I'm not here, when I'm not trying to venture out into the beyond and bring a little bit of the beyond back and express it in a way which can be comprehensible, but then also mystifying at the same time. So that I myself can go find myself in someone else's mystery, you know, hopefully through the dynamics of how this is all supposed to work, right? But then, like I said, you know, it's like it gets sketchy when you're feeding off of this whole system, and you're trying to look for that new thing and be this new thing, and even express yourself in ways which no one else has thought about expressing themselves, and because you kind of become, almost to an extent, outside of the platform, you know, coincidentally talking about that this is where I'm like that is on the platform, but to really kind of accentuate these aspects of being something that is so unknown and foreign, so that you can be that place that people want to visit, you know, and hear these things. It's hard to do that and to also live in the world of fundamentals, which are not abstracted, which are not foreign, right? They're totally at home and they're at peace, and the things have been in solution for so long that they're like cement, right? And then you're continually trying to invoke a reaction so that you can gain this attention through extraordinary means. But then in so doing, you lose the ability to gain the benefits of the system, because every benefit that you gain is just then amped up and exponentially then expressed in just a more abstract and obscene manner. And then all of a sudden you're so far gone that the methods and means to actually even do anything within the place that allows you to go and to take part and enjoy kind of, you know, the good things in life is far gone as well. Just by the way that, you know, you've pushed things and you've become this foreign place, right? Ironically, you know, it was this ordinary system though of exchange which drove people to the kind of extraordinary, you know. But really, I think it's good. I think that it's good, and I think that a lot of people should definitely I don't know, do this. I think that it's good to express, you know, like I said before, even if no one is watching these things or anything like that, where else would I do this? I mean, this is a totally unique experience right here. Because the thing is you might say, well, somebody talking to professionals in whatever type of field will invoke a lot of these conversations, but not necessarily, because obviously the whole environment and the whole stimulus which pushed somebody into that environment is going to invoke a totally different set of conversations, right? This is me just going out and searching and trying to find ground where I've never been before, and where, you know, you wouldn't think that there is solid ground, where you wouldn't think that there is air to breathe. And by just kind of formulating all the components around me into this structure, which then has sound, that then allows you to take a breath of fresh air as it becomes something which can be utilized and understood. So yeah, you know, I'm an advocate for everybody trying to go out and figure things out, and really just trying to be extraordinary themselves, you know, and make their little spire, you know what I mean? I kind of think we're all millionaire, billionaire, trillionaire, you know, whatevers, but it's like as we get taller, the shelves get higher. Sure, we can reach the countertops in our homes, but then the mountains are higher. The mountains we never even knew before existed. That's life right there. We're all multi, you know, trillionaire whatevers. Life, it's just seems kind of has this way of twisting itself, kind of like what I'm doing with these words here, so that, you know, there always is that next obstacle, that next counter, that next shelf that we got to climb, that we got to grow to reach, you know, and that's what keeps us alive. And also I think that it can be a little bit of a talent to kind of twist things up a little bit, you know, to be able to really abstract your world so that every single place that you go to can be somewhere totally new, and then the world in existence is always this place which is broad and expansive and never ending, you know, and you can be up on Mount Everest in your, I don't know, living room, you know, just by the way that you take these bits and pieces of what this actually is. What does this place represent? And then climb there. You know, and I think that it's healthy. You know, we can kind of like traverse the dimensionality of life. You know, we can kind of be the bug under the rug, the fly on the wall, and you know, then we can spiral back down our staircase, and you know, then we can find ourselves back at square one, where we're just on the base level of elementary, you know, and being able to kind of crouch down and speak to people on different levels, and then, you know, climb up some winding staircase to end up in this realm of disbelief and unbelief, right? Where we can put on these glasses and we can see things in a way which we've never seen them before. And then to be able to make this a level right here, make this a plane level that actually has components which act, you know, and then to be able to sit within this place, and then when this place has become the ordinary, the elementary, you abstract it by seeing how all of these components, they filter through and they interact with every other order that could be. And so then you abstract now this elementary back to the other elementary. And then when you're in either of those things, then you might be able to see how the abstraction that you came from is actually kind of influencing this kind of realm that you're in here, right? And then you can kind of traverse back and forth and find ways to get back there or back to here that were totally other pathways, you know, than the ones that you've taken before, by seeing how all of these things communicate and, you know, they shape themselves and manifest, you know, themselves in these different forms. And being able to like witness the pixie dust kind of flutter throughout existence, and just watch it as it's like, you know, the pollen of a flower, and then the salt and the salt shaker, you know, these places of two different dimensions right here. But then when you're shaking that salt, you know, kind of seeing the pollen kind of fall off the flower as you flicked it or whatever, you know, just something like that, where it's like, oh, you know. But then while you're in either of those places, being able to communicate with the parts that are there is key. And that's really, you know, a skill. But then in being able to invoke the flower with the salt shaker to find yourself in a place that's sweet rather than salty, when all you find yourself around is salt, but not having the salt then, you know, go directly to your heart, because what you're saying makes no sense at all, and not having the water, which is the currency of life, which is this sense, right, to be able to dilute the salt that you've then just thrown all over the room. That's where the skill comes in. You know, and the thing is that people watch these types of things and they see people go through transitions and phases, and you know, it's sad when people trap people in a transition because they don't allow them to complete the transition, the phase change, right? Where it's like, how would they be able to come to some solid understanding and application and attain the ability to exercise things in this way, if people notice them kind of acting a little abnormally or whatever, going through something, trying to find something new, and then they themselves reinforce the notion that they have to choke on all this salt, right? When they're trying to invoke visions of the pollen of the flower, at the table with all the salt or whatever. And what I then mean by that is people watching others through all of this technology, and not even on the technology, but just in life in general, and not allowing people to truly kind of attain that place where what they're doing then can make sense, right? They trap them in this place of no man's land, where they're reaching, they're trying to grasp for something, they're trying to really just get something out of life. They're struggling to feel alive, right? That's what people are going through. They're trying to taste again, and they want to feel the warmth, and they're trying to go there, and they don't know quite how to do that. It's like watching someone jump in the water and swim for the very first time, and you might sit there and think that you need to pull them out, or you might think that you need to throw them something. It's like the chicken hatching out of the egg, right? As the saying goes, the old wives' tale is that if you help the chick, then it's gonna die because it won't have the strength. If you never let someone jump in the water and try to swim, they'll never be able to. If people constantly are viewing others going through these transitions, trying to explore and trying to have some sensations which reinvigorate their willingness to feel alive, and the willingness to strive to become more than what they are, to overcome the aspects of themselves that they feel need to be overcome. If people don't allow them to do that, and it's hard. I get it, it's hard, then they'll never be able to, though. That's what I'm trying to say. But, when life is about that resistance, to a certain extent, people that are trying to jump in the water, people that are trying to learn and grow and express themselves in new ways, they have to buck up a little bit, and they got to realize that as they're going through these places, they're gonna encounter some bugs, metaphorically hiking through the jungle or whatever else have you, trying to go to these new places. They're gonna have to swat some annoying things off their shoulders, right? They got to brush their shoulders off a little bit. And anybody out there that is kind of trying to